Welcome back. A brand new episode of Two Please. I am your host Abhin.
And I'm your co-host Rohit.
Rohit,
I've just
I
had
have
an
had
epiphany 2
Go on,
minutes
go on.
back. I've been using my wired earphones for so long and Abhin has been suffering for it because I just missed one setting in the options. It's so much better. Already we're off to a good start.
Already, like me in the future is probably celebrating. You know, have you seen those memes of people like celebrating vigorously? I feel like that's going to be me when I start to edit this.
And I mean, how else would I have lived up to my Luddite title, right? I mean, famously Luddite. So I had to make
God.
that error.
Okay, never mind.
Anyways, So what are we talking about today, Abhin?
Today, Rohit came up with an idea, and it is not an idea because there's a recent event or an event that is going to happen in a couple of weeks or in next week. By the time this pod is out, it should be out. So, a bunch of movies are re-releasing on September 13th, and one of them is a 2018 Indian folk horror film called Tumbbad. Tumbbad. I don't know how it's pronounced. How's it pronounced?
Tumbbad. Yeah, Tumbbad.
Yeah, Tumbbad. Okay. Now, this movie came out in 2018, and I watched it for the first time in 2020, or I'd say 2020. Fell in love with it. Like one of my favorite original, like pieces of original Indian cinema to this date, right? So it's releasing in theaters, and it's also one of Rohit's favorite films in the same context. We have spoken about it in passing on one of the Monsters Under Our Bed episodes, right?
I don't remember where. I remember talking about it for a couple of minutes, but when I read that it was getting re-released next week or around the time when you guys listened to it, I was like, hey, this gives us a great excuse to talk about Tumbbad. I just needed one. And the hope is for the whatever number of people in India listening to us, this acts as a trigger. If you haven't watched the movie, I hope this episode nudges you to go and watch the movie, because if you love horror films, that are rich in folklore, and you've often wondered why can't India put out a film that is rooted in its own mythology, feels Indian, and is not taking Western tropes and just putting a wrapper on them. That film exists, and it's called Tumbbad. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's start the show.
Let us jump into this. So, like we said, Tumbbad was released in 2018, directed by
Rahi Anil Barve is his name. I think there were 4 writers in the mix, so it was a very collaborative process. Anand Gandhi was the producer. I think Soham Shah also came on as a producer actor. And again, Anand Gandhi and Soham Shah have some equity in the indie circles because of Ship of Theseus. So I think their participation really helped push the film across the line. What really helps this film, and I want to spend time on this when we dive deeper, is Barve's previous background as an animation artist, right? And it really shines across in the set design, in the color palette of the film, in the cinematography. It's brilliant, right? So very unknown set of folks. I mean, think about it. If Soham Shah and Anand Gandhi are the most known people in the room, it's a fairly unknown set of individuals who decided to bring this vision to life. And I think the story is either inspired by or an adaptation of the works of Narayan Dharap, who is this Marathi pulp horror fiction writer, who also adapts Stephen King works into Marathi for those who want to read it, right? So, and again, you see a lot of that aesthetic in the film as well. Anyway, long story short, small scale production, very diverse bunch of people. Even the cast, a lot of them come from the Marathi dramatic circle. So again, made on a budget, but had a very clear vision, which shines through the entirety of the film, right? It's a classic case of if you have the right vision, money isn't as much of a problem. While we've seen bloated bullshit, our fair share of bloated bullshit as well, right? Money is thrown on actors and sets, etc. But there is no story. This is the exact other end of the spectrum, which is so right off the bat. Philosophically, I love the film, right? So when I read about it, I was already like, cool. I'm in a mind to like the film, and then I watched it. But again, before we get into first impressions, so yeah, that's the broad uh, BTS story of making of Tumbbad, released in 2018, like you said. Won some awards in at the film fairs. I think more of the technicals and maybe a critic's choice. Fairly typical, right? Small budget film set in. It's not in Marathi, but it's very steeped in the Maharashtrian culture, right? So
Yes.
exactly, it's not got a Punjabi or a North Indian bias like most Bollywood films. So obviously it
Yes.
got ignored. It didn't get its time in the sun because unless you have a Kapoor or a Sharma or a Varma in your film, nobody gives a fuck in this country, right? So it is what it is. Sorry, I'm just always perennially going to be irritated at how film is critically evaluated and rewarded in this country. But anyways, besides the point, films
Blame
like
your
Tumbbad
wife.
are. My wife is a Sharma, just for the record. But
And you're half Maharashtrian too, no, are you not? Yes.
I am.
Oh my God.
So anyway, films like Tumbbad, in my opinion, are beyond award recognition and stuff. Filmfare is too pedestrian for a work of art like Tumbbad. But anyway, I can keep babbling on and wax eloquent about it. But let's get into first impressions. I mean, what was your first impression when you watched this film 4 years ago?
Oh, dude! When I first watched this movie, I'd heard like stories about it. I'd heard it of being. I just moved, so this was one of those films that got caught in the middle. And usually, if I hear about atmospheric Indian horror film that's getting rave reviews, I'm in the theater. I'd moved, and this was a time where I was like in the midst of adjusting to new surroundings, so I had no time to go check out stuff. Right, I didn't step into a movie theater for a couple of months, and by the time the movie had come and gone, the hype cycle had risen and fallen, and I was like, okay, it's something at the back of my mind. I want to check it out at some point. I remember the pandemic, so I saw it at a friend's place. We sat down, it was just me and her dogs, and I think for like the movie's about 2 hours, just a little over 2 hours,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
for the entirety of the 2 hours, I was just transfixed because I couldn't believe that there was a director out there, or there were like a bunch of creatives out there who capable of putting something so atmospheric, so dark, and so wonderful on screen. It's not in a traditional in the traditional sense of the word a horror film. Yes, there are elements of horror in it. I think the more you dig into the film, the more you uncover like the recesses, right? That humans will dip to just kind of just purely for their greed. And this was, and I've thought on my first viewing, I was like, hey, that's a theme that I've picked up on, and I will get to it in some point. But I remember coming out of it being like, I am so amazed that somebody made a movie like it. It's not perfect. I kind of, there are points of the film
Yeah.
where the pacing dips a little bit here and there. The animations, whenever I will not fault a low budget film that took 15 to 18 years to make for bad animation, but it's definitely a little clunky in parts. So, but all that said, as a visual experience, this is a movie I recommend to people all across. Like, you may not have no understanding of the Hindi language, you may be a complete foreigner to Hindi films. Like, I have like friends in the West, and I will suggest this as a piece of original Indian horror that they can check out and have a good time with. Not be scared. It's something like, even my mom watched it because she hates horror movies in general. I made her watch it, and she came across quite happy with it as well.
Yes. I remember my first. I remember the first time I watched this movie, right? And this was, I think, around the time it had released. I don't think it got a very wide release in India, and fairly soon it was on OTT platforms. If I recall correctly, it was Amazon Prime.
Yes.
Yeah, it was Amazon Prime. And so I was at home when I'd come back from work. This was in Chennai when I was living with my roommate, who also, before he had done his MBA and where we'd met and worked together in ITC, he had previously worked in the tech team of a movie theater chain. So as a result of his job, he would watch a lot of movies. Like, he'd be there, right? So he had a good eye for film also. Uh, not to sound bougie, but you get what I mean, right? He's not just watching for the heck of it. So I remember turning the film on. Firstly, again, end of work day, and this was a Friday, I think. So it was also imminent weekend. We were chemically altered, let's put it that way. And I popped the film in, and so the movie starts with, I think if I remember correctly, it's the Gandhi quote: "The world has enough for everyone's need, but not their greed." And it dives into setting the mythology for the movie, right? Which is the story of Hastar, which is that Hastar was the firstborn of uh, Mother Earth, and he wanted to steal all the gold and the food, right? And it's right off the bat, it sets the story, and I was like, I remember thinking, wow, this is like, I didn't expect this. Right? I didn't expect such
Yeah.
a deep-rooted Indian mythology, and right off the bat, both me and my roommate were like, wow, okay, I'm already interested, right? And then the first half an hour of the movie, and I'd like to slightly modify what you said, Abhin, which is, yes, I wouldn't call it an out and out horror movie because the horror elements aren't present through the movie. In fact, the second half essentially is a human character study. The first half an
Yes.
hour, though, is fucking scary, right?
Yeah, it is.
Uh, at least at one sequence towards the end of the first half an hour, and especially after. Okay, so we before I dive in, there will be spoilers. We are doing spoilers, right? So
Yeah, of course. Yeah. How can we talk
if you
about
guys
Tumbbad
want
and
to,
not? Yeah.
exactly. So the part from where his brother falls and to the end of that first act, it should just go 0 to 100 in like 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So I remember, and the lighting of, and this is what I was mentioning, right? His background as an animation artist, the lighting of that Wada, the house, is outstanding, like chef's kiss, right? You see the shadows of the candlelight flicker across, and what I've seen is this dichotomy, right? In Tumbbad, all of the exterior shots are blue, gray. It's constantly raining. It's got that like washed out feel, but all interior shots are candlelit. There, red walls. There's shades of yellow, ochre, red, orange, all of that. Same with the womb, where Hastar is womb of the earth. I love this dichotomy. I love the color palette and how vividly contrasting it is, right? And you see in the house those candle shadows flickering, and they've taken this kind of long shot, of the corridor where his mother hesitates to feed that Haji that is there in their house, and just the way the shots are framed, you as a viewer start feeling dread. And like I said, in the state that we were, me and my roommate were like, dude, I'm feeling something in the pit of my stomach. It's like the sort of dread which I haven't felt in a Hindi horror movie in a while. Like for the most part, I'm always like, bro, some crap, right? And then that sequence started where Sadashiv, or as you say in the Marathi accent, Sadashiv, when Sadashiv falls from the tree and his mom has to rush him to the doctor, and Vinayak has to feed our protagonist. Vinayak has to feed the grandma. That 10 minutes happened, and then we paused, and I turned to my roommate, and we were like, "Bro, we should not have taken anything before watching this movie. I am not in a good place mentally right now. I need a break." We took a break, drank some water, washed our face, and now we'll continue. And I thought the rest of the movie is like this intense, right? It is intense in other
Yeah.
ways, but we didn't get bored at any stage. But I'll be honest, a part of me was like, thank God that was the scariest part, and we're done with it.
No.
But what a movie!
No,
What
no,
a movie.
that opening 20-minute section, which is basically, it sets up. Okay, so a little background for those of you who are still here but haven't really been able to keep up. So there's a goddess like Mother Earth who gives birth to this
Yeah.
to her son called Hastar, and Hastar is a greedy bastard who goes after the gold. And just as he's about to go after the grain, he's stopped by the other gods, and the other gods want to kill him, but Mother Earth kind of makes a deal saying, as long as keep him alive, and I'll make sure he just stays in my womb. And the villagers of Tumbbad uh, decide to like revolt against the other gods, and and worship Hastar instead. And the other gods curse them with torrential rain, so it is perpetually raining in Tumbbad. And which is why this film literally drips atmosphere. So the film
Yes.
opens up with this woman who is the caretaker for the local sarkar. I think it's early 1900s, 1910s,
Yeah.
1918 or something,
No,
right?
I think it's like
So
1918, 1920 types.
yeah. So definitely around that time period. So she's like the local caretaker, and she's taking care of this guy who's this big gouted individual who's on death's door, while also taking care of two kids and this really old, haggard old 112-year-old lady, who claims to be the Sarkar, or like the owner's great great grandmother or something, who, because
Yeah.
of a curse from Hastar, is unable to die. So she's just cursed with perpetual immortality. She cannot die of natural causes. So she just keeps getting
And
old.
she's
And
perpetually
now this,
hungry. This becomes important.
yes, yeah, she's perpetually hungry. So she needs to be fed. And so this mother is kind of losing her shit. And one fine day, I think she's away, and the kids are playing, and Sadashiv, as you say, he
So
kind
that's
of falls from
you.
the tree. Shoo, he falls from the tree, and they end up taking. So the mother takes him to the hospital, leaving Vinayak, the older son, to feed the old lady. And that old lady basically goes for Vinayak, and it is a very terrifying 15 to 20 minute sequence that shot in darkness and candlelight, as Rohit mentioned. And it ends with Vinayak and his mother leaving to Pune. I think they just
Yeah.
say, screw this place. The old man dies. This woman is still being an ass, so they're like, let's just get out of here. And many years later, the story picks up with Vinayak coming back to the house of Tumbbad, and he goes to the old lady who's now like grown into the earth. She is now like there's a tree that's sprouting out of her.
Yeah.
And this is where she tells him the secret that of this womb hidden beneath the Sarkar's house, that will that he can then use to go and trick Hastar to give him gold coins. And that's
Yeah.
where the movie essentially starts. And for this trade-off, he ends up killing her, and this is where your movie begins.
Yeah, I think that's as much as good a setup as you can give without getting into further details. Obviously, things happen. We will address those specific spoilers and maybe in the thematic section, because we can't discuss the themes of the film without spoiling it. But this is essentially the setup. I think well put. But yeah, those are our first impressions, fairly long first impressions. We can quickly do any memorable moments over and above the ones we've discussed, and then we can get into the theme. I think that's the meat of the matter.
I didn't think they were going to do a creature. So I was very surprised when I saw a creature. I just thought it was a local. I
Yeah,
didn't know that they were going to do that. So when the creature popped up, I was like, oh, okay, you're doing this. Like, this is interesting. I have not seen, and it's not like a Ramsay Brothers creature, which we're so used to in Indian cinema, right? Like, either
yeah,
there hasn't been a creature feature since the early 90s because of what the Ramsay brothers did to Indian cinema. I mean,
correct.
if there is, I might have missed. There's a Makdi, or like, but she's a witch. I don't know.
She's
There's
a witch. Yeah, it's not the same.
uh,
It's all humanoid. I mean, even Hastar is humanoid, but there's no
hmm.
trace of humanity. He might have two legs and two hands, but he's out and out a monster. Like, it's a
Yeah,
creature.
yeah,
So
yeah. So that, seeing it for the first time, I was just like, holy shit.
yeah, his
And
first appearance
the
is
other and the other thing I really liked, and this sections throughout the film, is the depiction of India, in that from the put it from the time of the British Raj right up to post independence, where this movie kind of
Mm.
concludes, and how India keeps changing. And that to me was a really fascinating watch. Not a lot of movies take us through that time period, and they don't do it very well at all.
No, that's true, and it's not only is it faithful to the era, it's also faithful to the geography in the era, right? If you look at the attire and the sort of food they're shown eating. Again, I've not stayed in Pune per se, but I've stayed in Bombay. So, and like you said, I'm half Marathi, so I have some insight into the world. If I were to extrapolate what things would be 100 years ago, it's a fairly good representation, I feel. So
Hmm.
it's like I said, it's not only era appropriate, it's also geography appropriate. So I completely agree with you there. For me, the memorable moments, like I said, the first 20-25 minutes or whatever, far and away the most memorable bit for me. But apart from that, uh, first appearance of Hastar, like you said, but also at the end when the whole twist happens, right? Where um Vinayak and his son Pandurang think they found
Hmm.
a way to outsmart Hastar. And
Yes.
then again, I won't spoil it right now. We'll talk about it when we get to the theme section. But something happens and you're like, damn, they just got outsmarted by Mother Nature. I just like, no, you think you're the smartest person in the room. You're not. That was an epic moment for me when I was like, okay, I thought the film had written itself into a corner, not in this or in the sense that hey, you're going to make the protagonists win. It dilutes the moral lesson you're trying to leave us with, and then
Yeah.
that thing happens, and then they're like, no, this movie is fucking awesome, back on track. So that I would also like to mention an unmemorable moment, or rather, I wouldn't call it an unmemorable moment per se, but a section. And like you rightly said, right, the film is clunky in parts. The whole track about Vinayak's mistress, who is that
Yeah.
opium trader's daughter-in-law, Raghav, or whatever his daughter-in-law. I felt it took away from the core plot of the film. I understand the point they were trying to make
It's era
about how
appropriate. Yeah.
it is era appropriate, and it's trying to make a point about patriarchy and how he's his wife is being shortchanged, and because he has money, it's showing how toxic patriarchy mixed with power and wealth can be. But I'm like, it's fine. You've already landed the message of greed and power in the course of the film so far. So I felt it sort of took away from the film. That's probably my only narrative gripe. Any other gripe would be budget related, graphics and stuff. But
Yeah.
that we get they get a
That's
pass for it.
very unfair. Yeah. It's very unfair
Yeah,
for us to
exactly.
do
They
that,
get a
isn't it?
pass for it. But yeah, those were my memorable moments. I think let's dive into the themes. I really want to get into that.
This movie deals with, and I think the most common one is the cycle of greed, right? It's greed. So
Yes.
this, since the beginning, since starting with the birth of Hastar and his whole thing, like this, the central theme that runs through the entire story is greed, about how greed corrupts, it consumes and then destroys. And the film, told through its three acts, kind of just showcases that. At the start, it's the gold that corrupts, and in the second half, it fully consumes him, and by and at the end of the third act, it fully destroys. And I like how there are consequences to that greed sprinkled throughout the film. Like, no matter, he may be earning a lot of wealth, but there's that saying that, that ill-gotten wealth never has a price to pay regardless, or something along those lines, right? Like, his son is born with a club
It
foot.
sounds like you made that up. Made it up on the fly. I know there is a saying
I
like
know.
that, but you were so far away.
I was just like, oh, it's been a long day, guys. I'm sorry. It's, if you want the accurate description, I will put it up on
No,
screen.
you got the essence of it. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, importantly.
No, but I completely agree. At the core of the film is the concept. It's not difficult. I mean, it's not fair to call it a concept. It's larger. It's the theme of uh, the perpetuation of greed, right? But I'd also like to add another bit of nuance to it. I think what the film does over the course of the movie is at the start it gives you this message that it probably pays to be sinful than being virtuous, because look
Hmm.
at the influences that Vinayak as a boy is seeing, right? He sees Sarkar being this old guy who's rich, and because he's rich he can also pursue his lustful desires. His mom is essentially, they show her
The
having to give
concubine.
this almost 80-year-old guy a hand job, and which is a horror movie in and of itself, right? I'm not even going to go down that route. I could, but I won't.
Oh, please don't. Please, it's been a. Please don't.
But so, anyways, right? You can see the lessons that Vinayak is learning as a younger child is, hey, there's nothing wrong with pursuing cardinal sins: greed, lust, quest for power. And you can see even as a kid, you see him pushing his mom, saying, "Hey, why are we leaving Tumbbad? You only got one gold coin. Why can't we go back?" And he feels,
Hmm.
because of the servitude his mom had to undergo, he feels entitled to the treasure of the place, right?
Yeah.
So there is arrogance, there's pride, there's essentially he's got a smorgasbord of the original sins that he's indulging in, right? And this is just as a kid, right? Pushing his mom, saying, "Hey, no, we are entitled to all of it. We should go back and get it." And apart from his mom almost rejecting him and sort of smacking sense into him and saying you will not go back to Tumbbad, promise me and all of that, he's not punished for wanting to indulge in these sins. And in the first half of the movie, you see that his ambition, his greed is paying off for him, right? He undertakes the effort of going back and figuring out how to get the coins from Hastar and the whole funda of making flour dough, whatever dolls and stuff, and it starts paying him off. We see him as somebody who's poor, but because of his bravery, and this is in his mind, and the film showcases it as bravery, right? It says bravery in the pursuit of greed. He gets those coins, pays this Raghav guy off, starts becoming rich. And the first half of the film, you're almost made to feel: is this movie telling me is this like Wall Street, right? Greed is good.
No, just about. I was
Like,
coming to that. The Wolf of Tumbbad.
yeah. Full of Tumbbad, essentially. I'm like, is that what this movie is trying to tell me? But as the movie progresses, you start seeing that sin corrupts you more subliminally, it's not as obvious, right? Uh, and the benefits of being good is also very subtle in the beginning, and it starts becoming more obvious with the very obvious end at the end. It's very obvious where his son decides to break this cycle of greed, right? This perpetuity of greed. So there's almost like the message of good being good starts off subtly and reaches a crescendo, while message of evil being good starts off very overt and then becomes very subtle, and it talks about how
Nice.
being bad is bad for you. So this tonal balance, the film balances this duality of tone brilliantly, I feel. And this is not something I caught in the first view. The greed bit is, they hammer you over the head with it, but there's a
Yeah.
lot happening second, third degree below the surface, which upon repeat viewings, I was like, this movie is a fucking masterpiece.
Absolutely. Like you, and there's a moment, like the moment we spoke about how it becoming obvious that the son was going to break the cycle of greed. And I don't think the son was ready to break the cycle of greed until something really important happened. And the moment is basically the ultimate greed consumption, like we spoke about how greed consumes. Beautifully done. It's just like, hey, hello, meet the result of your meet your consequences.
Yeah,
This is
actions
how it
mean
should be.
consequences.
Consequences, exactly right.
No, I completely agree, right? I think when his son Pandurang sees that in the pursuit of that loincloth, which signifies like the apex greed, right? Because now if you have the loincloth, it's like uh, in theory, your greed should be met for perpetuity. But what he realizes that, and this is where I want to make the other point, right? Like, I'll come back to the thought I just started, but in the grandma and even in Vinayak, when he's bitten by Hastar at the end, the monster that they become, I think the allegory that they're also trying to land here is your inner ugliness and your inner greed and monstrosity is now outwardly manifesting, right? It was there inside you all along. The monster is inside all of us. The ones who have, us who have let greed drive us too far. Now that monstrosity is out for all to see, right? And that is exactly what Pandurang sees when he sees Vinayak in the pursuit of his greed. While you have achieved what you thought was, the satisfaction of your greed for perpetuity, you have had to sacrifice your humanity, so to speak, in its pursuit. And I think that's when he gets the realization that now that I have this, you will always covet what you don't have, right? You might have endless wealth, there'll be something else, and the pursuit of that something else will require you to give up some more of your humanity, right? So unless you can train yourself, or unless you decide, hey, I'm content and I'm not going to keep perpetually wanting more things, there's no end to it. I think that's the realization that hits Pandurang. He's like, the only way to like break this is to walk away right now. I need to take that decision. And I think all of that realization falls on him in those 10 seconds where he sees his dad, even after being bitten, he's like, hey, this is what you wanted, right? Take it. Let it all be worth something. And he's like, no, me walking away from this situation with some humanity intact is worth more than that loincloth can ever be. Right? That's the final thought that the movie wants you to walk away with.
Yeah.
Fuck, this movie
Fucking
is awesome.
phenomenal. Yeah, exactly.
It's so
Any more
good. It's
themes
so
to
good.
discuss?
Uh, I mean, a brief word on the. I mean, we already touched upon this, but again, they've alluded to it. I wouldn't say they've been very explicit with it, but they've shown how, even with independence coming in, the same sort of power structures, the same uh, collusion with people in power, the same patriarchal cycles being perpetuated, continued, and it's just new rulers of more familiar skin tones, maybe not as white, but the people who are repressed continue to be repressed. It shows that, again, like I said, it's not very explicit. It lets you infer it from the way events are unfolding on screen. Like in the first half of the movie, you have that British inspector who's extorting Raghav for
Hmm.
money. In the second half of the movie, you have the government of India coming in and saying, they're being bribed by Vinayak to, I think he's giving some sort of donation to, for them to turn a blind eye to his illegal activities and his opium consumption and stuff. So you
Hmm.
see the same corruption, same cycles continue. So again, not a major theme, but that's something that it alludes to, and I feel somehow it doesn't feel like the film is juggling too much. It manages to land this theme.
Like there's that brief. It's a brief bit about colonialism. It kind of like the impact of colonialism, where you like the previous regimes are corrupt, like you said, like just piggybacking off of your point, the previous regimes corrupt moves eventually kind of find a feet in the new, in like you said, familiar skin tones, new
Yeah.
rulers, right? And this was like it's wasn't it quite common? A lot of the zamindar lands were being reacquired by the government post independence. There are a bunch of other films that have well, also, I think, famously that come to mind. Lutera also deals with the subject where the government
Hmm.
starts taking back land that, like these sarkar types people owned, and essentially eliminating that class completely.
Yeah, I think the
And
whole transition of princely states to post-colonial India is very fascinating. Is a very fascinating
mm,
study in and of itself, right? Up until I think
mm,
73, when the Privy Purse, the National Privy Purse, was finally abolished, uh,
mm,
these are people who were as privileged as can be. You come from royal families, and they were still getting paid a certain sum of money every year by the government. And as a common man, you sit and think, you're like, what the fuck, right? Here we're struggling for
mm,
like, uh, okay, we're not exactly struggling to make ends meet, but we have aspirations that are still always a little out of our grasp. These guys are just sitting and getting
yeah,
things done for them. And I recently went to Rajasthan for a trip with Poonam. And so even when I was there, I was seeing the castles that these royal families lived in. These royal families still exist today, right? The Jodhpur royal
mm,
family still exists today. And so does the Jaisalmer royal family. And I think they make like a significant amount, like 30, 40 lakhs a month off of the rentals they get off their properties, what they've leased to hotels
mm.
and farmland. I'm like, fuck you all, man. Seriously, nothing changed, right? In like 300 years or
Nothing changed,
whatever,
right?
nothing changed. Democracy is
It's
for the rest of us mooks.
get out of the game as fast as you can. It's
Seriously,
basically it. Mm.
just for the rest of us mooks. But anyway,
But yeah,
that's the
mm,
other theme that Tumbbad talks about. So though some of you might have noticed, I haven't really tried to shoehorn any of my exaggerated sexual humor here, because this is not that kind of film, right? It's a
please,
I
please
don't think
don't.
there's
Yeah,
any
yeah.
humor in this film. Yeah, it's not. I don't want to shoehorn it. I don't want
No,
to. I just want to spend this episode just talking about how much I love this film. It's beautiful. It's serious. It's deep. It's dark. It's beautifully shot. It's the passion that goes into the project shines through every frame of the film.
mm,
Spectacular performances across the board. In my opinion, Soham Shah is probably the weakest of the lot, and that's not me being critical. Probably a little immersion breaking for me because his Marathi pronunciation is good,
yes,
but you
I've heard
can
people
tell
say this.
he's not
Yeah,
Maharashtrian.
mm,
Yeah, and everyone
yeah,
else in the cast, if I'm not mistaken, is Maharashtrian. So
mm.
if you have an ear for it, you're like, yeah, that's my only concern about
Gripe
him
with
and
it. Yeah.
gripe with
Mm,
him. Otherwise, he's acted really well. Um So yeah, I mean, I could keep going, but I love this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of want to quickly talk about its like the sad impact it had on Indian cinema. As in, we like this should have been a revival of folk horror, but a lot of really poorly thought of low budget horror films have come in its stead. I think horror comedies have become a genre. Like people, those have said cash register is ringing, but the genre itself
Yeah.
hasn't received any sort of boost that I thought it would receive after this
See,
film
I'm
having
guessing you're
film
talking
19.
about Stree, right? Which is
Street 2
horror
is running full
comedy.
screens, right? Yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah, I've seen the first one. I haven't seen the second one. It is a horror comedy, you're right. I mean,
Mm.
the comedy part of it is questionable, but whatever. They want to purport to be comedy. It's good for them. I mean, in its defense, though, even Stree is rooted in some very Indian folklore, right? So,
Yes.
I mean, it's nowhere in terms of quality, nowhere close to Tumbbad. I'm not even going to
Of
assert
course, yeah.
that, but at least it's rooted. It feels Indian. One other Indian horror film, which again is super rooted, is super geography and era specific, and is fucking amazing, is Bulbul.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Have you watched? Tripti
No, it's
Dimri, Rahul Bose. It's
this
on
one.
Netflix. It's on Netflix.
Anushka Sharma's she produced, right? I know of the film. Yes.
Yes. I'm forgetting
Hmm.
the director's name. It's a woman director, and again, you
Hmm.
can tell I don't know. There's just some depth to characters that women directors bring to the table, which I think they just understand human characters better than men. This is down to it. There's characters are so very fleshed out, and Bulbul, played by Tripti Dimri, her character is superb. Again, rooted in, I wouldn't say presidency era Bengal, slightly later. Again, I would say 1890s, early 1900s Bengal. Um, very Bengali, very era specific. You have these Zamindars, Rahul Bose plays Zamindar and stuff. He has a double role, in fact. Tripti Dimri is awesome in the film. I think that was her unveiling to the world in a sense, although not her
Hmm.
debut film. Rooted in the Indian Chudel lore, and it's not
Hmm.
Chudel as in witch of the Western. Like Chudel has its own lore in India, right? So
Yeah.
amazing film. That's the only one I would say is in the same stratosphere or whatever, same level of Tumbbad. Tumbbad and Bulbul are probably my, if I had to pick, say, 5 favorite Indian horror films of all time, they would be in that mix.
Okay.
And if you
Awesome. I haven't
haven't,
checked
guys,
out Bulbul
again,
yet.
Abhin or anyone else, yes, please do. Please do. It's beautiful.
Okay. That is part of the plan. Uh, okay. I think we're almost at the end. We've kind of like waxed eloquent about Bombard. We've also done the themes, spoken briefly about its impact. We kind of debated about this going back and forward about how we should do this category or not do this category, but we have decided to do it anyway because who cares if we don't do it or not.
Yeah, and I
Um,
kept this little factoid of the film. I didn't talk about it. I kept it for this section. So this is how Abhin and I debated it, right? We were like, how do you connect an Indian horror film to uh, Gone Girl? Because the section we're talking about is 6 Degrees of Gone Girl. And then I remembered that the score for this film, while Ajay Atul have done one song. There's just one song in the film. They've composed that, but the score, like the background score of the film, is by fucking Jesper Kids of all people. Now, for those of you who may have found this name familiar, you may have heard of Jesper Kid from the gaming circles. Most famously for Assassin's Creed games, for the Hitman games. I actually knew of him from the Hitman games. There's a piece of his called Apocalypse in the fourth one, Blood Money. Amazing song. It's like super operatic. It's very atmospheric. So even like separately from all of this, I'm a huge fan of Jesper Kid just for his game soundtracks. And then Abhin found a connection. So Abhin, how are we going from Tumbbad to Gone Girl?
okay.
Let's break this
Okay.
down.
Like Rohit gave Jesper Kid his flowers. I will give him his flowers too. There is a game I have been playing since 2009. 2009. It has been 15 years since that bloody game came out, which is Assassin's Creed 2, which, in my opinion, has the best opening to one of the best openings to a video game of all time, right? It has that cutscene, and the theme song Ezio's Family, which has now become Ubisoft's
Ezio
theme song.
Auditore
It's
da
so,
Firenze.
yeah, like his theme song is, oh, it's so damn good, and it opens up with
Yeah.
Ubisoft Presents, and I said, oh, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. Anyway, just the kid good. So I decided to make the connection to Assassin's Creed. So I said, okay, fine. Since we're using like producers, music directors, let's go down this route. So Jespicate did the music for Assassin's Creed 2. Kristen Bell plays Alice or some, I forget her character's name, is in Assassin's Creed 2. Now, let's find a connection. So Kristen Bell was in Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
Correct. I would have.
Yeah, with Jason Segel. All right.
Okay. Okay. Do you want to take Jason Segel? You have Jason Segel. You have Mila Kunis. You have Paul Rudd. Paul Rudd also is connected to a lot of folks.
We can take. Okay, I'll take Segel. You take Rudd. Let's
Okay.
maybe let's do that. Or cool. It's whoever
Okay.
you want to do. So I'll take Jason Segel. So that makes Kristen. So Jespicate, Kristen Bell, Jason Segel. I got it. Jason Segel, Cameron Diaz in Sex Tape,
Oh.
which is this, yeah. Cameron Diaz, Leo DiCaprio, Gangs of New York.
Oh. Oh my god. We're back to Departed and Matt Damon.
Yeah, Leonardo DiCaprio, Matt Damon. The Departed, Matt Damon. Ben Affleck, Good Will Hunting. We need to find a better connector than Good Will Hunting. I feel like we have now reached this point where it's only Good Will Hunting. I'm sure he's done more films.
I mean, that's
Oh, okay, fine. Screw it. Matt Damon, Last Duel. Screw it.
Yeah, Last Duel. There's also the Jay and Silent Bob movies. Yeah, we have options.
Yeah, Jay. Yeah. Okay, sure. Yeah, there we go.
We can keep rotating.
Dogma.
Okay, let me try with Paul Rudd. Paul Rudd, Anchorman, Steve Carell. Okay, so Paul Rudd was an Anchorman. Steve Carell was an Anchorman. Steve Carell was in Foxcatcher. Was Matt Damon in Foxcatcher? No.
That was Steve Carell, Channing Tatum, and
this is not as easy as I thought it would be. Hey, maybe the Anchorman 2 had a bunch of cameos. Did Ben Affleck cameo in any of those?
No, I didn't. Let me also think. I'm sure I can find a way.
Damn, I thought Paul Rudd would be my way out.
I know. You know what? I found it. I found it. Paul Rudd. Avengers Infinity War.
Okay. Chris Hemsworth. Ragnarok.
Yes.
Matt Damon.
Yes.
You cannot escape the Matt Damon.
I was going to go Deadpool 3, but he's not in Deadpool 3. Spoilers for Deadpool 3. He's even though he's alluded to in Deadpool 3, but then that made a far more impressive connection. I was just like,
I found Paul
I got
Rudd
it.
in Avengers. Yeah, hey, so fine for later. Paul Rudd Avengers is also a great way to get into.
Yeah.
Matt Damon.
Anybody
we eventually just have to get to Matt Damon.
To get to Matt Damon, he's and we found him in the Avengers. He's mad. This man is everywhere. This man is no shame.
Yeah. But yeah, we somehow managed to connect a 2018 Indian horror film to Gone Girl.
There we go.
We are yet to be defeated.
Amazed.
Thanks to Jesper Kid.
Thanks to Jesper Kid, hero, goat.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's us for this week's episode. If you have not liked and subscribed to the video already, please do. Look at the silly shit we're up to on most weeks. How could
like
you not
and
love
subscribe us,
warna
Hastar aa jayega.
Oh my god. Oh, go to sleep.
Okay, that was bad. Cut it out.
Yeah. No, I'm going to keep it in.
But yeah, that's us. We'll see you on the next one. As usual, we'll think of what we want to talk about a couple of days before we record.
No, actually, we have our next episode planned. So we have a guest coming on. So I have a friend of mine who is comic book artist. Yeah, was a comic book artist. Famously created the comic superhero Musalman. His name is Falah Fezro. He is doing his best to like get sniped by the government for some bullshit. But we're having him on our platform because he's a good friend and I love him. And we will be discussing great comic book graphic novel adaptations that aren't superhero movies. It'll make for a very fun episode. I feel like some of you already have, those of you listening, you probably have ideas of where this episode is going to go. That will be the next episode. We need to record it like in the next 3 days. So at some point. This is for you.
Thanks for letting me know today.
I told Falah midweek and we're already in midweek. Anyway. So
yeah.
But yeah, that's coming up next. And we'll catch you on that one. Until then, take care. See you. We'll do a 6 degrees of Gone Girl there as well. Like that'll be far easier. Yeah. Okay. See ya.
Okay.
Bye-bye.